This is our new project car, a 1989 Ford Mustang. And back in '89, Ford claimed this thing made a blistering 225 horsepower at the crank. But after all these years, well, it's gotta have lost some of that power, right? But why? Where does it go? Well, that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna figure out why old cars lose power, and we're gonna talk about what you can do at home to restore that power. Then, we're gonna take the Mustang to the dyno and see how many ponies are left in the stable. Welcome to Big Time. Okay, here we have a little Borescope. There they are. We'll keep an eye on the smoke.
You're not doing anything illegal. I'm not?
Now the Foxbody started all the way back in 1979, but this being a 1989 means it's part of the third generation Foxbody, which ran from 1987 to 1993, arguably the best Foxbody. With updates like a mass airflow sensor in 1989, 9-to-1 compression, forged pistons, ground effects packages, and super sleek aerodynamic brick-like headlights. Now, this is a GT, which means it has the 5-liter, the V8, the 302, which has its roots all the way back in 1969.
Nice.
But you could also get the Mustang in a notchback, which is arguably cooler looking, but more expensive these days, unless you're willing to buy it with the 4-cylinder that some of them came with. But if you did get the V8, well, you could expect 225 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque at the crank when it was new. But after 36 years of hard living, well, some ponies have to have left the herd, right? But why? Where do they go? Why do old cars lose power? Well, to understand that, you gotta understand how an engine works. So come with me to the garage.
All right, now we know this is a 4-stroke engine, which means there are 4 individual strokes or processes going on in all your cylinders at all times to keep your engine running. And the 4 strokes are as follows. First up, you got suck, and that's when your engine sucks fresh air in from outside. Then you got squeeze. All that new fresh air is mixed with fuel and squeezed and compressed until the next stroke, which is bang. That fuel and air mixture is ignited by the spark plug, and bang, you make power. And then the 4th and final stroke, blow. The exhaust has to come out of the engine and go out the tailpipe. And if any of those 4 strokes are negatively impacted by wear or damage or gunk, well, you're gonna lose power. So today we're gonna look at all 4 of those strokes and try to make sure they're functioning as best they can so that we can make as much power as we can. We're gonna start with the suck stroke. All right, the suck stroke, or the intake stroke, is all about sucking fresh air into the engine so it can mix with fuel and make power. Engines are basically big air pumps, so if you make it harder for your engine to pump air in or out of it, well, you're gonna lose power. So you need to make sure that you can pull air in as easily as possible. And over time, there are things that will make that harder, like a clogged air filter. So we're gonna start at the front of the intake system and open up our air box, take a look at our air filter. Looks like a little K&N filter. So these are cleanable. This one's a little dirty. I mean, you got some gunk on there, but not terribly clogged up. All right, so our air filter isn't particularly clogged, but since this is a reusable and cleanable air filter, we'll clean it up and get it flowing even better. All right, now moving down the intake system, we get to a pretty important piece, and this is our mass airflow sensor or mass airflow meter. And as important as it is for air to be able to freely flow into your engine, it's equally important for your engine to know how much air is flowing into it. That's where this guy comes in. It's pretty simple. It's just got a heated wire that sits in the path of airflow. It heats up that wire, and the air passing across it cools it down. And they know how much air is flowing past the sensor based on what temperature it is. So then this can tell your ECU how much air there is, and then your ECU can tell your fuel injectors how much fuel there needs to be, and then you have a properly running car. Now over time, these can get gunked up and coated in grime, which stops them from being effective. Now let's take a look at our 30-year-old MAF and see 36-year-old MAF. Down, pretty small. There they are, our little hot wires.
The light was fading, and Jeremiah needed to finish his work before the dark. But unbeknownst to him, fate was stirring, and a great tragedy was about to fall upon him. But Jeremiah was not without hope, for he had a tool that could turn despair to light. and a friend whom he could almost always count on.
What is that? What the heck? What is that? A mouse? Hey. Help? It's her? What? Who is her? Jeremiah. Yeah, okay. What do you want? SOS help. Please to emergency. Oh. SOS. What the heck is this? How are you in my computer?
Computer. I'm using AnyDesk, dude.
Of course, Zach should know. Jeremiah is always using AnyDesk to connect to his computer.
AnyDesk. I'm using AnyDesk. Okay. Now help. SOS help. Okay, Jerry, I'm coming. All right. Oh God, are you okay? You look
Finally! Oh
You're
my
not-
God!
You look fine. What's wrong?
Can you pass me that wrench, please?
You're kidding.
I already got down here. I had all the tools, and this one's out of my reach. Thank you. Love you.
All right, man. I'm out of here.
You can also do much more useful things with AnyDesk. You can remotely edit, transfer files. You can even connect to your parents' computer halfway across the country to help them open up a web browser. We've all been there. With AnyDesk, you can access computers securely and seamlessly without actually having to be physically next to it. Thank you to AnyDesk for sponsoring this episode.
Just from looking at them, they look pretty clean, which is good news. Now we can squirt those off with some contact cleaner to make sure that they're clean. But if you were to take this out and notice, some dark buildup or some grime on there, well, that's no good. Now the other thing to note is that this is how your engine knows how much air it has. So that means that all the air that's coming into your engine needs to flow past this. So that means that you can't have any air leaks past your mass airflow sensor and before the throttle body. Otherwise, air is going to take the path of least resistance and be getting sucked in around and past your MAF. So that will cause a lean condition because you're getting more air than this thing knows about. This thing needs to see it all.
Like a girlfriend.
It is like a girlfriend. Now, a very common place for air leaks to develop are in these kind of these bellows, this accordion section on this old intake hose. These are very common places for cracks to develop, and this can just become brittle, and you can have a hidden crack that you can't quite see, but air will be able to get through it. So you need to really carefully inspect it, make sure there's no cracks in there, bend it around a bit. It should be able to move without breaking. And sometimes if you do this, you'll expose like a hairline crack right in the depths of a bellow. But this thing is still pretty flexible. It feels like rubber still, and I don't see any cracks. So I think we're good there. Okay, and then we get to our throttle body. Now, this is where you'll have some vacuum connections, and vacuum leaks are another form of an air leak that you shouldn't have. And they're very common because a lot of these old lines will get really brittle and they'll just crack. So you need to inspect all your vacuum lines, make sure that there are no cracks, make sure they're not too brittle, and give them a wiggle as long as you have vacuum line to replace it with. Now that's all fine and dandy, but once your air gets past your throttle body and into your intake manifold, well, its job's not quite done. It's still got to get into the combustion chamber. And to do that, that means it needs to go through the runners on your intake manifold, and it needs to go past your intake valves in the head. Now, if you have a bunch of gunk or buildup in your intake manifold or on the backside of your valves, well, that can make it harder for air to flow into the combustion chamber. So you need to make sure you don't have a bunch of gunk, grime, and buildup in your intake manifold and on the backside of your valves. Now that's not as huge of a problem in kind of old school fuel injected cars like this, where the fuel gets injected into that air upstream of the combustion chamber and upstream of the valve. So the fuel that's in the air does a pretty good job of cleaning off the valves as it goes by. But in newer direct injection cars, where the fuel is directly injected into the combustion chamber, it doesn't pass over the valves, so you'll very commonly get a bunch of carbon buildup on the backside of your valves. So much so that you can't even seal the combustion chamber anymore. So keep an eye out for that. You can clean that stuff off with a media blaster or a walnut blaster directly onto the backside of the valves. We are going to jam a borescope into our intake manifold, and we'll see what we can see. Okay, there's our throttle body. Hi, little fella. How you doing? Doesn't look too bad. It looks a little old, but it's not particularly dirty in front of the blade. But if you were inspecting your new project car and your throttle body was all gunked up, or if maybe the blade couldn't seat against the body very well, you'd want to clean that. But for us, I think now we'll put the intake system back together, fire this thing up, and check for any vacuum leaks.
Okay, the first step in testing for any air leaks is to start the car and get it idling, like so. Okay, now we'll go to the engine bay. Now we'll take some starting fluid or brake cleaner and we're going to spray it around the engine bay anywhere that there could be an air leak, like along vacuum lines or around our tubes or throttle body. And if we notice an increase in RPM while we do it, that means we have a leak and it's sucking in our fluid. Okay, well, on most cars, it's a little bit easier to tell when the RPM changes when you have a leak, but with a car like this that has a cam in it and a lopey, kind of erratic idle to begin with, it does make it tougher to tell. But luckily, we've only got a couple vacuum lines on the car, so we can visually inspect them to make sure that we have no leaks, although I think we have no leaks. All right, our suck stroke is sucking, so now it's time to move on to the second stroke, the squeeze stroke, compression. So compression in an internal combustion engine is when the piston goes up and squeezes the air and fuel mixture in the cylinder. This increase in pressure helps the air and fuel mixture to burn more efficiently and powerfully when the spark plug ignites it, which ultimately gives you more power. The Mustang has a 9:1 compression ratio. Now what does that mean? Well, it's a comparison of the volume of the cylinder with the piston at bottom dead center to the volume of the cylinder with the piston at top dead center. A higher compression ratio increases cylinder pressure and generally increases power, but it can also increase the likelihood of knock, which will require higher octane fuel. Now, that's all fine and dandy when your engine's brand new, but if your engine is old and worn out, it might not be able to effectively keep all that compression in the combustion chamber. Your cylinders can leak, and there are 4 main places they can leak from. First, cylinder pressure can leak past the rings. If your rings are old and worn out, and they're not sealing against the cylinder walls very well, or if your cylinder walls are destroyed, pressure will get past your rings. The next place you can lose cylinder pressure is past your valves. If they're not seating properly, they don't have a good seal. Now this can happen because they're dirty or, heaven forbid, bent. But if they're not sealing well, you will leak pressure past them. Third place you can lose cylinder pressure is your head gasket. If you've got a faulty head gasket not keeping pressure where it's supposed to be, you will leak it either into your cooling system or out into the atmosphere. The fourth and final place that you can lose cylinder pressure is around the plug threads. If you don't have a good seal on your spark plug, you can lose cylinder pressure through them threads. Now there's really a fifth way that you can lose cylinder pressure, and that's by bending a rod or shattering a piston or putting a hole in the side of your block. Those will also cause you to lose compression. But we need to be able to test our compression. And of course, we've all heard of a compression test, but we're gonna go one step further and do a leak down test. It's like a compression test, but more. So the first thing we're gonna do is take out all the spark plugs, and then we'll be able to rotate the engine by hand, and we'll get cylinder 1 to top dead center on the compression stroke. Okay, we got our plug wires out of the way. Now we'll take our spark plugs out and see how they look, and then we can get underway with the leak down test. A little wet, but nothing too crazy looking.
A little cobwebby.
Oh, I think I just pulled some grime out on the way out. If that's from inside the combustion chamber, that's not good. That one's a little messy. Okay, here we have a little Borescope. This is just a cheapo I got on Amazon a few years ago. So we're gonna poke it around in our cylinders and see if anything looks significantly out of place. You wanna put it in your butthole? Yeah, just to see what's going on. All right, so I can see the cylinder walls here, and I can still see some cross-hatching. I see a tiny bit of scoring, but it looks very, very light, not just like normal wear. So that's great. If you can still see cross-hatching, then that means that your cylinder walls are in decent shape. Cross-hatching, if you don't know, is kind of the finish put on the cylinder walls. In some cases, you can do it with the dingle ball, like I did on my RB25. And that cross-hatching just helps oil kind of cling to the walls and helps your rings seal up. Okay, after a quick borescoping, everything looks pretty freaking normal, and that's good news. So now we can proceed with our leak down test. All right, the first step for a leak down test is to get cylinder 1 at top dead center on its compression stroke, which means that the cylinder is all the way at the top and the valves will all be closed because it would be trying to make compression. So this is the state that the pistons need to be in to test your compression leak down. So I'm gonna spin the crank by hand, and we're gonna be paying attention to the marks on the crank pulley.
that indicate where top dead center is. Dead nuts on the crank pulley. So cylinder 1 piston should be all the way up, valves closed, ready to make compression. So now what we can do is get our leak down tester. This is a fairly simple tool. Okay, so we've got a hose, and this will thread into our spark plug hole, and then this end will come back to our tool, like so. And then this end of the tool goes to our handy dandy air compressor. And basically what we're gonna do is put a known pressure of air. We're gonna put 100 PSI of compressed air into our cylinders, and this will not only measure how much is coming in, but it will measure how much is staying in or how much is leaking. So we'll be putting in 100 PSI, and if 90 PSI stick around, then we have 10% leakage, and that's really, really good. So we'll just kind of run this on each cylinder and reference this gauge, and we'll be listening for leaks, which we'll talk more about in a second. It's pretty simple. You just need to have an air compressor. And what's nice about this kind of does, in some sense, the same thing a compression test does. A compression test being similar, where you do thread into your spark plug holes and you do have a gauge, but then you just crank the engine and you read how much pressure you make on that gauge, which is fine and dandy, and it will show you if you have low compression in a cylinder. But a leak down tester not only tells you if you have low compression on a cylinder, but it will help you figure out where you're losing that compression from. Okay. Cylinder 1's between 10 and 15%. That's pretty good. We're on the low side of green. That's great. So this gauge here is just measuring how much of the air that we're putting into the cylinder is leaking out. So the lower the number, the better. If we were just blasting air into the atmosphere, our leakage would be at 100%. But since the air that we're putting into the cylinder is being contained by the cylinder, the piston, the valves, the piston rings, and the spark plug threads, and the head gasket, well, it keeps most of that air in there and makes our leakage number very low. So if we had bad rings or we had a bad head gasket and we had significant leakage, that number would be somewhere up in the 40, 50, 60% range, or even worse. But since we only had 10 to 15%, we're golden. Now we just got to do that 7 more times and hope to find the same result. All right, now setting up cylinder 1 for your leak down test is pretty easy because your crank pulley has timing marks on it which reference cylinder 1. So it's very easy to just look at that and get to top dead center. But there's no numbers on the crank pulley for any of the other cylinders. So the easiest thing to do is just follow the firing order, meaning that, you know, cylinder 1 is first to fire, but cylinder 2 isn't second to fire usually. In this case, cylinder 3 is second to fire. So I'm gonna move to cylinder 3 next because I know that it's hitting its compression stroke just after cylinder 1. And then you can just keep going down the row. The firing order in this is 1, 3, 7, 2, 7, 3, 2, 1. 1, 3, 7, 2, 5, 5, 5. 1, 3, 7, 2, 6, 5, 4, 8. So we'll just go in that order. Okay, so cylinder 5 is a little bit low on compression. Some audible leakage past the rings. You can hear it in the crankcase, which isn't great, but it also isn't terrible. You know, it's like 25% leakage, which is higher than I wanted to see, but still operating. I mean, eventually we'll probably have to deal with that, but for now it's just something that we know. Now, the reason I'm not going to do anything about it is because the only thing really to be done about it is take the engine all the way out, all the way apart, and rebuild it, which maybe we'll do that at some point, but for right now, it runs pretty good, so we're just going to leave it be. Keep an eye on it, you know? Got my eye on you. Okay, now we've got extremely high leak. That probably means I've got something going on. It's especially with an older engine like this where there's kind of a lot of gunk around the spark plug threads. It's a little tough to get these to seal up first try, so you might have to take it off, clean it, and get it to seal up. So if you see crazy high leak results, often it's just because you got the thing. It's on you, you know what I mean? Yeah, look at all that gunk. Okay, I'm just using the Borescope here to look at the top of the piston so I can see when I get to top dead center, which is right there. So if you have a Borescope, that's kind of the easiest way to do it. You can physically see the piston, where if you're just using a screwdriver or a piece of wire, you're still guessing a little bit. Okay, and that's cylinder number 8. with a very good leak down percentage. Really, the only bad news was cylinder 5, which was leaking. Still in the low leakage range, but a lot higher than the rest. Everything was around 15 to 20%, with the exception of cylinder 5 at around 30. So now that we know that our cylinders are holding their pressure, mostly, it's time to replace the spark plugs and move on to the next stroke of the 4-stroke engine. Bang! All right, now the bang stroke, or the power stroke, is where we make all of our power. Now we've already sucked the air in and we've compressed it with fuel, and now it's time for the ignition to shoot a spark into the cylinder to make our power. But the ignition system is a pretty common place for losing power. Over time, these things can become weak and your spark can become weaker than it should be, which means your fuel and air mixture doesn't ignite as completely or as efficiently as it should, and you lose power. So let's take a look at the ignition system on the Mustang, talk about how everything works, clean a few things up, and replace a couple things. This thing has sort of an old school ignition system. All right, let's start at the start of the spark, at the coil pack. This is the coil pack for the ignition system, which, you know, we're pretty familiar with coil packs. Most cars have coil packs, but these days it's usually a coil on plug, so each spark plug has its own coil pack. But in a car like this, there's one coil pack responsible for the spark on every cylinder. Okay, so this takes our 12 volt from our battery and through a series of windings, ramps that voltage up to over 20,000 volts, which is the voltage that you need to make in order to jump the air gap in the spark plug. So that's why if you ever get shocked by one of these, it hurts like hell. Okay, once the coil pack makes all those volts, it sends it over to the distributor via the primary wire here. And then the distributor is responsible for distributing that spark to the correct cylinder at the correct time, over and over and over. Let's take it apart and see what's going on in there. Okay, there is our distributor cap and there is our rotor. So basically the rotor spins around inside the distributor cap and delivers spark to the right spark plug wire at the right time. So these can get dirty and or they can get worn out and make the contact between the rotor and the point worse, meaning the spark heading to your cylinder is worse and weaker, which makes less power. So this guy looks pretty clean, but we'll hit it with a little bit of Scotch-Brite and just clean up those points. I figured we'd look at this and try to clean it up before we think about replacing it, because these things are like 500 bucks. So it looks pretty clean. We'll give it a wipe down. I do have some new spark plug wires, and then ultimately some spark plugs. We're also upgrading the coil pack.
What?
Yeah!
No, we're not.
Yes, we are!
No, we're not.
All right, we got our first new parts for the Foxbody. We got a set of Ford Racing spark plug wires. Pretty much the same as what's in there, just new. We got some spark plugs and an MSD coil pack. Classic mods for a classic car.
Just some 5-0 boys and a Mustang boy.
I don't know, you'd have to ask Phil.
How's it go, Phil?
Phil, sing it to us.
Call us pony boys, them 5-0 boys. We got a Mustang with a 5-0. We are V8 boys, we about to get cams. A little bass in the trunk, dang, we got a stand. Call us pony boys, them 5-0 boys.
All right, now that we've got a nice, refreshed, and healthy ignition system, you might think we're done with ignition stuff, but we're not. The most important part of the ignition system is the ignition timing. When I say timing, I think a lot of people think about timing belts and chains, but this ain't that. This is the timing of when the spark occurs in the cylinder. And the best time for that to happen is right before the piston reaches top dead center on its way up. That's because it takes a certain amount of time for combustion to happen and peak power to occur. And you want peak power to occur just as the piston is passing across top dead center. So that's why you fire the spark plug just before top dead center, so you leave time for that combustion to occur. Now, we have control over when these things happen with the distributor. So we need to set our timing with a timing light. And as long as you have a timing light, it's very easy. Let's do it. First, we need to loosen up the distributor. And second, we need to remove this guy. This is the spout connector. And by removing this, it puts the car into ignition timing set mode. Basically, it locks the ignition timing and lets us completely control it by spinning the distributor. Now, the Mustang factory, I think, is 12 degrees before top dead center timing, but it's probably a good time to mention that this car has a cam. This has a Ford Performance E camshaft in it, which is there for a little bit more performance. And because it has that, these will tend to like a little bit more advanced ignition timing, something like 14 to maybe 16 degrees before top dead center base timing. So we'll see what it's at now, and then we'll probably bump it up to 14.
15, dude.
Maybe 15.
15. Keep the 5s.
Well, listen, dude, here's the thing that you didn't think about. We're in California and we only have 91 octane, and the more timing you run, the more octane you need, or else you'll detonate.
91 sufficient for 15, dude. Everybody knows this.
91 might be sufficient for
Trust
15.
me, dude, I've been gapping every panel on this car to 025.
Okay, so we just have to loosen this one bolt down here, and then we can rotate the distributor, just like this. Now there's a paint mark indicating where it was, which is right there. So once Cannon gets our mass airflow sensor plugged in, we'll fire the car up and we'll measure the timing as it is, and then adjust if necessary. So the trick is to get your timing light. It doesn't need to be a professional digital timing light. Any timing light will do it. All right, so you power your timing light with the jumpers straight to your battery. And then you got this inductive loop. This goes on cylinder number 1 plug wire. Put the plug that away. Okay, and that will read when cylinder 1 is being triggered, when it's receiving spark. And as we know from earlier, there are degrees of timing marks on the crankshaft pulley referencing cylinder number 1. So this is gonna freeze time and space and show me those marks, and referencing the pointer that's coming off of the engine, I'll be able to see exactly how many degrees before top dead center my spark plug is firing. It should be around 10 to 12 right now. Let's find out. It doesn't like to idle with the cam and base timing, so it may die, but that will be okay. Okay, now we just got to get this thing down in there, pointed at our crank. Like I said, it's over 20,000 volts, so you don't really want to get zapped. Okay, well that was, fine. We're at 14 degrees before top dead center ignition timing now, so we will lock the distributor back down, we'll put the spout plug back in, and then this thing will idle a lot happier, because in reality it idles a little bit higher than base timing to begin with. So that's good, we know our ignition timing now. We'll keep an eye on the smoke.
Problem alert, new problem alert.
Yeah.
New problem alert.
Whoop, whoop. Ah, brand new day. And while our ignition system is looking nice and refreshed, there is another ingredient necessary for the bang stroke to be working properly, and that's fuel. Now the Mustang is fuel injected, which means there are 8 fuel injectors, 1 for each cylinder. But if any of those injectors get clogged up even just a little bit, they can't do their job very well. Injectors need to do 2 things: spray an accurate amount of fuel and atomize it well. Air and fuel need to be blended as well as possible for efficient combustion. So a streamy or weak spray out of a fuel injector will do pretty bad things to how your engine runs. So we're gonna take our fuel injectors out and clean them and look at how well they're spraying, and then hopefully just put them back in. I gotta take off the intake manifold first, but that should be pretty quick. Whoa! Yeah, okay, so one of the main aesthetic calling cards of the 5.0 from these is this intake manifold. It's a 2-piece manifold, and this, all that you see is the upper intake, and that's all we need to take off. So we basically need to detach the intake, a couple vacuum lines, a couple connectors, and I think 6 bolts, and it should come right out. And then we have easy access to our fuel rails. Well, I'm currently just trying to pull this vacuum line off of the fuel pressure regulator, and I pulled the whole fuel rail out. I can see that it's got 1 bolt in there, but it's loose. It feels like it doesn't even have one in the back. It doesn't. So, I mean, you know, that's one of those things that we probably wouldn't have found if we weren't trying to clean these injectors. And who knows, maybe injectors don't need to be cleaned at all, but it's all worth it just to find the lack of hardware there. That's no good. Hey, this was almost my first car. I've wanted a 5.0 since I can remember. I went and looked at one for like $3 grand, and it was a GT, it was black, it was automatic, and went and test drove it, and it was sweet. I did a burnout, like first burnout I ever did in my life. Did it on accident, leaving a red light in one of these with my stepdad at the time. And so I fell in love and really wanted to buy it. Had just enough money to get it, but the seat belts didn't work. They like didn't retract. They were just loose in there and floppy, and my mom Oh, wouldn't let me buy it. Okay. Ah. Oh yeah. And that's that. That looks like a vacuum cleaner. Gosh, it's hard being this funny. All right, now that we've got everything out of the way and our fuel rails are loose, we can start taking our injectors out and cleaning them. I've got a tool. Want to see it? Here we've got a fuel injector tester. I got this on Amazon for like 25 bucks, and it's pretty simple, but it allows you to test and clean your fuel injectors. Comes with a handful of these adapters that you will jam your injectors into, and then you'll grab a can of aerosolized fuel injector cleaner, which is kind of tough to find out here, so I'm just using the mass airflow sensor cleaner, which isn't going to clean as well as fuel injector cleaner, but it will show us our spray pattern, which is really a good starting point. So we're going to turn this sucker on constant pulse, high power, and put our fluid through it, and we're going to look at our spray pattern. And we want to see a nice mist rather than like individual streams. I got to hold this guy on here. We'll hit pulse and you'll hear it work. See how misty that is? That's pretty good. That's a pretty clean injector. All right, now this injector is gonna go into the that's fine pile, and we'll check the next 7. Okay, all 8 injectors are spraying pretty well. Nice atomized fuel pattern, which is good for our combustion and our power making. So that takes care of the bang stroke. I do need to get some new O-rings to put those back in, but I'll take care of that later. The next thing we need to do is talk about the last stroke, the blow stroke, exhaust. This one's gonna be quick. Now, the way that your engine pumps air out is through your exhaust. It goes from the heads all the way to the back of the car usually. And if that exhaust flow gets interrupted or obstructed by anything, it's gonna cost you horsepower. So a few ways that can happen are catalytic converters can become clogged over time and not let exhaust flow through. Or you can have damage, like you bottomed out on something crazy and bent an exhaust pipe really badly. Or somebody could have put a banana in your exhaust. And you always have to check for that. Every morning when I come out to start my car, check the tailpipe. The other thing that can happen related to your exhaust flow is that you can have some sensors go bad. Your O2 sensors live in your exhaust and they detect how much oxygen is in your exhaust. If there's a lot of oxygen, it says you're running lean. If there's only a little bit of oxygen, it says you're running rich. And if there's just the right amount of oxygen, it says you're running perfectly stoichiometric. And over time, O2 sensors can start to read inaccurately, and they can get caked in gunk that can make it harder for them to do their job. And if your O2 sensors aren't working properly, well, it can confuse your ECU. So your O2 sensors are telling your ECU how lean or rich you are, and then your ECU is telling your fuel injectors how much fuel to let in to correct that reading. And if the reading is wrong, well, then you'll be running wrong too. So we're gonna go ahead and replace our O2 sensors. They're pretty cheap, about 25 bucks a piece on this thing, and it's just a good thing to do after all these years. Now I will also, speaking of good things to do, we haven't really been under here too much yet, and you may notice it's disgusting. We've got a bunch of leaks, or maybe just one big one, who knows, I can't tell yet. But while we're not fixing that today, we will fix it. But not today. No, not today. Nothing too crazy looking, just looks like an old O2 sensor. Okay, now Phil just asked a good question, which is, what is this wrench I'm using? And this is specifically an oxygen sensor wrench. They're all pretty much the same size, and this obviously has this channel here, which is for your wires to go through. Now, of course, you could just use an open-ended wrench, but a lot of times these things are pretty stuck in place, and an open-ended wrench is much more likely to round this thing off than this, which gets a grip on all 6 sides of the socket, or the sensor, but has, a channel for your wires to go in and out of. Now, sometimes like on these, where you can disconnect it close to the sensor, you could get a wrench to just slip over, but in a lot of cases that's not possible. So it's really nice to have one of these sitting around. Old, looks real old. New. Look at that. Now, our O2 sensors are replaced. Now, while we're down here, seems like a pretty good time to do an oil change. Okay, arm jack stands in the way, just about. Good chance for a mess here, folks. Could I change things and make sure that I don't make a mess? Yeah. Yeah, I could. And now, I don't know if you remember, but I do also suspect that there's way too much oil in this thing. So we're about to find out. Now the Mustang's supposed to have 5 quarts of oil in it. This is a 16 quart oil pan and it was empty, so we'll kind of estimate how much was in here once we're done. I will say it's been coming out at a pretty heavy rate for a while. Like there's a lot in there. Okay, here's our oil filter. Do you think I'll just be able to spin it? Probably not. I'm gonna be honest with you, there's some sparkle to it. Now for those who don't know, you might think sparkly oil sounds cool. And I agree, yeah, sparkly oil does sound cool, but it isn't. Your oil should not be sparkly. All those sparkly bits are metal that used to belong to some parts of your engine, mostly your bearings. And they should still be a part of those pieces, but instead they're in here, which isn't great. It means we've definitely got some worn components, mostly probably our bearings. I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm just gonna see what happens. Put some fresh oil in it. Actually, now that we got the oil all the way out of it, you wanna fire it up, see what it sounds like, no oil? Yeah, for right now, I mean, it's not gonna cost us a bunch of power, but it will probably eventually cost us the ability to keep running. But that's for the future. What am I gonna do, you know? Rebuild this thing right now? No way, let's break it first. So while we may have uncovered a little bit of bad news, we've also uncovered a little bit of good news along the way. And it looks like we've got some more mods under here than I was aware. I think this is an aftermarket sway bar. We've got some tie rod extenders and bump steer correctors. So this thing might have a little bit of angle. We do need to fix the power steering. It's leaking seemingly from everywhere. We'll figure that out. For now, Ford Racing Performance Parts oil filter.
Good vibes, good vibes.
I let my bit dry the whip, boy. Clip, 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 clip. I hope they leave that clip in. I put this seatbelt on like it works. It doesn't work.
Oh, it works.
No, it doesn't.
What gives you that notion? Well, just wait until I hit the brakes. And
Yeah.
then that thing will activate, dude.
You see how I'm trying to activate it?
Hey, that seatbelt mechanism's younger than you, dude. All right, Jerry. Before
Okay,
we
bud.
stick this thing on the dyno, we might as well see if it's running good.
Yeah,
Take it for a little spin.
I can't wait.
It runs better.
Does it?
Yeah. I don't. Cold start right now. Let's see how she does.
Okay,
You
let's
remember
see.
how it used to do?
Yes, I remember.
A little lumpy. Take a couple tries.
Yeah. Wow.
Dude,
Pretty good.
now that's nice.
Now that's a nice idle. You're not doing anything illegal.
I'm not?
In the worst tires ever, too.
Hell yeah.
These things are so bald and
That's
stinky.
right.
They stink when you burn out in them. We got a dude. This is a great Sunday cruiser.
That's right.
Misaligned steering wheel.
That's right.
Car that shifts good.
Yeah.
The engine don't you always feel better after you do all the oils and spark plugs? And
Yeah,
sensors?
overall I do feel better, but I also feel like we found that it's got a little bit of leak down in cylinder 5.
Yeah.
But you know, we did find a little bit of shiny metal, shiny oil.
Should we send it to Blackstone or is that oil
It's
gone?
gone.
Okay.
Long gone.
Oh, you weren't gonna rip one, huh?
No, dude.
Bro,
I'm
what
being
is
good.
What is going on with you today? Oh, so much restraint. Well, you know what? I'm excited. I think that this thing is going to be great. I think what it's going to do is motivate us, do the suspension and brakes and all the safety stuff.
Yeah, and I think it'll motivate us to make more power because in any case, this doesn't make a lot of power. But
Right.
at least it's healthier now and it's fun to drive. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think
Yeah.
up next is gonna be suspension and wheels, steering, brakes, making it drive better
Yeah.
now that it runs better.
Right. Because I will say though, even if this thing makes 170, 180 horsepower,
Yeah.
whatever it is. If it's a tight car with good suspension, good brakes, good wheels, good tires, all that stuff, that's plenty of power to have a whole heck of a lot of fun.
It's already fun, and it's got enough torque to burn the rear tires off. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, as long as it doesn't explode on the dyno, we're in business.
Well, I didn't even think about that, but
Oh, how could it? So now let's talk turkey.
yeah. Oh,
What do you think it's going to make on the dyno?
Oh, brother, I'm gonna say this thing makes 180 horsepower.
I think that's a good guess. So from the factory, it would have made 225 crank.
Okay.
So if you figure a 15% drivetrain loss,
Yep.
that would put us at about 191.
Yeah, and then over the years,
Over the years, so one thing that we did uncover, we did a leak down test. Oh, there's the foot plate from the trailer.
where?
Right there. You want to grab that?
What happened?
It ripped off. We're a little low. The GX is not that tall.
Bent the whole thing, huh?
Holy smokes. Came in with just enough gusto that I didn't even feel it. I heard it like, but
That's
yeah, what'd you guess?
180.
180, that's a good guess.
180.5. I can't do whole numbers. That's rookie.
Yeah, that's true.
180.5. That's my lock-in. What do you
I
think?
think that's a good guess. I think, okay, if we figure a 15% drivetrain loss, that
Yeah.
puts us at about 190. We did a leak down test, cylinder 5, a little bit leaky.
Okay.
So that's got to lose us a few.
a few pounds, or a few ponies there.
But we
the
do
years,
have the cam,
you have the cam.
which if you look online, some people say it makes power, some people say it costs you power if you don't have the right supporting mods.
Okay. Which we don't.
And if we think back to this dyno, it reads a little bit low. These Dynapacks or whatever they are on the lower end of the spectrum of dynos.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 178.
Oh, you're close. Oh, you one up. You.
That's what I was gonna
Price
say.
is right
no matter
for
what.
my ass.
I figured you were gonna make a worse guess. To be honest. But yeah, I think 178.
I could see there's a world where this
But-
thing makes 168.
There absolutely is.
you know.
That's 100% true. But I think like 260 torque.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, 260 torque. I'm not even gonna guess torque.
And keep in mind, it redlines at like 2,800 RPM.
All right, well, let's see what it does.
Let's go find Koji. Oh yeah, 5,600 RPMs of fury coming through the rear wheels.
Burned a little smoke there.
Yeah, well, she's probably running a little rich, you know. In addition to getting horsepower and torque figures, we'll also be able to look at our air-fuel ratios and see what's going on there. And we'll get to see the shape of our curve. You know, we should have a big, meaty torque curve and a relatively flat horsepower curve. That looked like a pretty approving nod. That's good, because usually things don't, the first run or two is usually pretty low.
It looks like we shouldn't have called Mike Day because he's gonna make us look bad.
Hey, I would love to guess low for once. Oh, can you feel the power? Right here, you just feel it. Huge numbers? Oh. Hey, yeah, okay, great. We're spot on for 15% drivetrain loss. We made 190 and a half and 248 foot-pounds of torque.
That's pretty good.
So a little lower on the torque than I thought, but a little higher on the horsepower. This thing is healthier than we thought.
pretty consistent runs.
Yeah,
3
very
passes
consistent.
there. Looks good. You don't see too much flutter in the graph, so.
She made it almost all the way to 6,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
Graph looks great. We got nice mid-range on the torque, peaking at about 3,750, but it's pretty flat from 3 to 4.
Yeah, 3 to 4, that's our power band, baby.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna get after.
And that's that E-cam in there, dude.
Yeah.
Doing its thing.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah.
190.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said 178.
And I said 180.5?
Yeah, and good thing Mike Day didn't get a guess in.
Good thing, because he nailed it, right?
Yeah, he said 191, which is exactly what it should be.
But he's
minus
over.
15%.
He's over.
That's
fucker.
true.
And Price is Right rules, Mike Day. Play the sound right here. Dun 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 dun. Whip up.
All right, let's get this thing off the dyno and get her back home. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. And if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're trying our darndest to get to 2 million by our first birthday in just a couple months. So subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you next time.
Did you think I was?
But
Stock, a little bit of leak down on one of the cylinders, but overall feeling pretty healthy.
Okay. Can you set timing on the thing?
I did. We're at 14 degrees, so a little more advanced.
Okay.
So yeah, a little more advanced. New coil pack, that cam, and I think that's it. A K&N air filter, bro.
Nice.
Yeah.
Does it get headers or anything? Or like
Oh yeah, it does.
hooker
Yeah, it's got
headers.
hooker headers into the stock 4 cats, and then it cuts off after the cats.
Forgot about the headers, dude.
Yeah, I did forget about the headers.
That might change my answer. Let's see
Yeah.
what Mike says.
They might rob us. Who knows?
Yeah, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah,
What dynos are we on?
That's rough.
Yeah.
What's that supposed to, what's the
225 crank, 300 torque crank, 36 years ago.
And you're on what dyno?
I'm on, what is this, Dyno Pack or Dyno Jet? We're on Dyno Pack, so yeah, so you know, a fairly low reading dyno.
Yeah. What'd you say the stock was?
225, 300, yeah.
Ooh.
No pressure. We're filming it.
Okay. Boy. I'm gonna go with like 190, 280.
190, 280, okay, well you are the most optimistic of us
What'd you say?
so far. 191, 280.
Okay, 191. Okay.
So I think 191 is a good guess. That's like if you took 15% drivetrain loss, that's exactly what it should make if it actually had 225 to start.
Yeah.
But you know,
What did your 46 do on that dyno?
257 or something.
Yeah, not great.
Geez.
Yeah.
Because those do on our Mustang like dead nuts 280 like every
Yeah, yeah. So that's really like the biggest discrepancy I think might be the dyno, but my guess is like 178, 260.
Okay, you're probably more accurate with the dyno, but I'm optimistic for you. And
Yeah.
really banking on the headers and the K&N. So.
Yeah, me too. But we'll see. But that really has nothing to do with why I called you. We want to talk E9XM3 shifters.